Marcus Chin stood in the observation deck of Station Unity, watching the Volrene ship approach through the viewport. The vessel moved like liquid crystal through space, catching starlight and bending it into impossible angles. He had prepared for this moment for 2 years, studying every piece of information humanity had gathered about the Volrene species, but nothing could have prepared him for what he was about to experience. The station's AI announced the docking sequence in 3 languages. Marcus straightened his diplomatic uniform and joined the rest of the human delegation in the main hall. Ambassador Rodriguez gave him a stern look. "Remember, Chen, no personal comments, no cultural assumptions, just follow the script we practiced," she said. Marcus nodded. He was the junior diplomat on the team here, mostly to observe and learn. His job was simple: stand in the back, look professional, and don't mess up humanity's first major alliance. Opportunity with an advanced species. The airlock doors opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The Volrene entered and Marcus forgot how to breathe. There were 5 of them moving in perfect synchronization. Their bodies were tall and slender, covered in what looked like translucent crystal that shifted and flowed like water. But it was their skin that captured him. Beneath the crystal surface, light moved in patterns, dancing colors that seemed to tell stories in a language Marcus didn't understand. Each Volrene had 4 arms that moved with mechanical precision and faces that were almost human, except for the large eyes that held depths like looking into cut diamonds. The lead Volrene stepped forward. Her movements were different from the others, less rigid, more fluid. The translator device around her neck activated. "I am Silith, first speaker of the Volrene Diplomatic Corps." Her voice came through the device sounding like wind chimes. "We come to discuss the potential alliance between our peoples." Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward and began the formal greeting that had been planned and rehearsed. Marcus watched from his position in the back, trying to memorize every detail. The Volrene stood perfectly still during the greeting, their light patterns subdued and controlled, showing only pale blues and whites. The 2 delegations moved to the conference chamber, a large room designed to accommodate various species. Volrene sat on one side, humans on the other, with the negotiation table between them. Marcus took his seat at the end of the human side closest to where Silith sat. The initial discussions were dry technical details about trade routes and technology exchange. Marcus found himself studying Silith instead of paying attention to the words. There was something about the way her light patterns moved that seemed different from the other Volrene. Theirs were uniform and controlled, but hers occasionally flickered with unexpected colors that vanished as quickly as they appeared. 3 hours into the meeting, Ambassador Rodriguez called for a break. The Volrene delegation remained seated while the humans stood and stretched. Marcus walked to the refreshment station, trying to work the stiffness from his shoulders. "Your species requires frequent rest periods." Silith's voice came from behind him. Marcus turned, surprised. She had approached silently, standing just a few feet away. Up close, he could see that her crystal skin wasn't uniform. There were tiny imperfections, patterns within patterns that created depth and complexity. "Not as efficient as your people, I guess," Marcus said, then immediately worried that might sound offensive. "Efficiency is not the only measure of value," Silith replied. Her light patterns flickered orange for just a moment. "Your delegation seems tense." "First contact situations are always stressful," Marcus admitted. "We want to make a good impression." "Why does impression matter?" Silith asked, tilting her head in a gesture that seemed curious. Marcus thought about it. "Because we hope you'll see us as worthy partners, I suppose. We're still new to the galactic community, and we know the Volrene are one of the oldest civilizations. We want you to respect us." Silith's lights flickered again, this time a cascade of colors that rippled across her skin before settling back to pale blue. "Respect is earned through action, not appearance." "That's true," Marcus said. "But appearance can tell you things about someone too. The care they take, the choices they make, and how they present themselves." The lights under Silith's skin began to shift more rapidly now. Colors bloomed and faded in patterns that reminded Marcus of something. He watched, transfixed, as purples and greens and golds danced across her crystalline form, creating aurora effects that seemed to pulse with an internal rhythm. "You are staring," Silith observed, But she didn't sound offended, merely curious. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, but he couldn't look away. "It's just the way your lights move. It's like watching the northern lights back on Earth, the aurora borealis. It's one of the most beautiful natural phenomena we have." The word left his mouth before he could stop it. "You're beautiful." Every light pattern on Silith's body stopped. The colors drained away in an instant, leaving only pure white. She stood completely frozen. Across the room, the other Valrine had turned to stare. Their light patterns had also gone stark white. The entire chamber fell silent. Ambassador Rodriguez was looking at Marcus with an expression of pure horror. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had broken protocol somehow, said something terribly wrong, but he didn't understand what. He opened his mouth to apologize, but no words came out. Silith raised one hand in a gesture that seemed to stop everyone in the room. She spoke in her own language, a series of chiming sounds that made the other Volrine shift uncertainly. Then she switched back to the translator. "Clear the room," she said. "I wish to speak with Marcus Chen alone." "That's highly irregular," Ambassador Rodriguez started to protest. "Clear the room," Silith repeated, her voice harder now. "This is not negotiable." The other Valrine filed out silently. The human delegation left more slowly, with Rodriguez shooting Marcus a look that promised serious consequences later. Within moments, the large conference chamber held only two beings. Marcus stood alone with Silith and the crushing weight of knowing he had just destroyed humanity's best chance at a major alliance. Silith remained frozen, her skin still that blank, colorless white. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you understand what you have done?" Marcus swallowed hard. "No, but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend that word you used," Silith interrupted. "Say it again." Marcus hesitated. "Beautiful." Silith's entire body shuddered. Colors exploded across her skin, chaotic and uncontrolled, before she forced them back to white. "No Volrine has heard that word in 3,000 years, she whispered. "And I need to know why it makes me feel like I am breaking apart." Part 2. The Forbidden Concept. Stood in the empty conference chamber watching Silith struggle to control the light patterns dancing across her skin. Colors kept breaking. Through the white, she was trying to maintain flickering and fading like a signal trying to break through static. "I don't understand," Marcus said carefully. "What did I say wrong?" Silith moved to the far side of the room, putting distance between them. Her forearms wrapped around herself in what looked like a protective gesture. 3,000 years ago, the Valrine civilization nearly destroyed itself. She began, her voice steady, despite the chaos of lights across her skin. "We had achieved great technological advancement, but our society was fracturing. Do you know why?" Marcus shook his head. "Beauty," Silith said the word like it physically hurt. "We became obsessed with aesthetic hierarchies. Those with the most pleasing light patterns were given higher status, better opportunities, more resources. Those deemed less attractive were pushed to the margins. Artists and pattern designers became more powerful than scientists or engineers. We stopped valuing what individuals could contribute and valued only how they appeared." She turned to face him, and Marcus saw that her eyes held something that looked like pain. Wars were fought over beauty standards. Entire regions were destroyed because they refused to conform to the dominant aesthetic. Families were torn apart. Valrine modified their bodies so drastically that they could no longer function. We nearly went extinct chasing an ideal that meant nothing. Marcus began to understand the weight of his mistake. "So you eliminated the concept entirely." "The Reformation happened 2,800 years ago," Silith continued. "Our greatest minds came together and made a choice. They removed words related to aesthetic judgment from our language. They designed suppressants that would dampen the emotional responses tied to visual stimuli. They taught new generations that appearance was irrelevant, that only function and contribution mattered. Within 500 years, beauty became a forbidden concept, something our ancestors had poisoned themselves with that we had evolved past." "But you still have light patterns," Marcus observed. "You still create visual displays." "For communication only," Silith said. "Each pattern has a specific meaning tied to information transfer. There is no art in it, no expression. To use our lights for anything other than efficient communication is considered primitive and dangerous." She moved closer to Marcus, her lights flickering between white and bursts of color she couldn't quite control. So when you said that word, when you called me beautiful, you violated the deepest taboo of my civilization. Silith's voice dropped to a whisper. And the worst part is that I felt something when you said it. Something I do not have words for because those words were taken from us. Something that makes me want to hear you say it again. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. I'm sorry I didn't know. Do not apologize, Silith interrupted. Explain instead. What does that word mean to your people? Marcus thought about how to explain something so fundamental. Beauty is how we describe things that move us emotionally through how they appear. A sunset that makes you stop and stare. A piece of music that creates images in your mind. A person whose face or movement makes you feel wonder or joy or connection. But why Silith pressed? What purpose does this serve? Maybe it doesn't serve a purpose, Marcus said. Maybe that's the point. Not everything humans value has to be efficient or functional. Sometimes we value things simply because they make us feel alive. Because they remind us that existence is more than just survival and reproduction and work. Silith's lights exploded in a cascade of colors that she didn't try to suppress this time. Golds and deep purples and brilliant reds washed across her crystalline skin in patterns that seemed to pulse with emotion. They lied to us, she whispered. The Reformation leaders? They said they were removing a poison, but I think they removed something essential instead. Marcus took a step closer. What do you mean? Silith looked at him, and her light settled into a pattern that seemed somehow sad. I was not supposed to be on this delegation. I am considered defective by my government. Defective how? I experience unauthorized responses, Silith explained. When I see certain things, my internal chemistry changes in ways it should not. The suppressants we are given from birth, they do not work properly on me. I feel things that Valrine are not supposed to feel. My superiors thought sending me to meet humans would cure me by exposing me to a species they considered primitive and emotional. They believed I would see how dangerous feelings were and accept my treatments. Voluntarily. That's not what happened, Marcus. Guest double quotes no, Silith said, and her lights shifted to something that might have been the Valrine equivalent of a smile. I have been studying human culture in secret for 2 years. Your art, your music, your literature, things my people abandoned millennia ago. I have been learning words that do not exist in my language anymore, and I have been meeting others like me. Others. There are Valrine who want to feel again, Silith explained. Not many, but we exist. We have been secretly reducing our suppressant dosages, trying to experience what our ancestors experienced. It is illegal and dangerous. If we are discovered, we are taken for reconditioning. Some never return. Marcus felt a chill. What's reconditioning? They increase the suppressants until the unauthorized responses stop, Silith said flatly. Sometimes they have to increase them so much that the individual loses all emotional capacity entirely. They become functional, but empty. We call them the hollowed, but only in whispers. That's horrifying. That is safety, Silith said, with bitter humor. That is what my civilization chose. And I thought I understood why I thought the Reformation leaders were correct that feeling was too dangerous. Until you looked at me and said that word, she moved close enough now that Marcus could see his reflection in her crystalline skin. When you called me beautiful something, inside me, broke open, Silith whispered. For just a moment, I felt what I think my ancestors must have felt. Not the obsession or hierarchy or madness, just the simple joy of being seen, of having someone look at you and feel something positive. Is that what beauty means to humans? Marcus nodded. Part of it, yeah. It's about connection. About recognizing something in another being that resonates with. Something in yourself, like Silith's lights, cascaded through. Every color Marcus had seen and dozens he hadn't, the patterns were chaotic and uncontrolled. But somehow they seemed right. Like watching something caged finally break free. My people spent 3,000 years trying to eliminate danger, Silith said. But I think we eliminated life instead. And meeting you, meeting humans, has made me realize that I would rather be dangerous than empty. reached out with one crystalline hand, stopping, just short of touching Marcus. Words made me feel seen for the first time in my existence, she whispered. And now I must decide if I am brave enough to keep feeling. Part 3. The conspiracy unfolds. The diplomatic talks resumed the next morning, but everything had changed. Marcus could feel the tension in the room like static before a lightning strike. The Valrine delegation sat in perfect formation, their light patterns subdued in uniform, but Silith's kept flickering with unauthorized colors. She struggled to suppress. Ambassador Rodriguez pulled Marcus aside during a break, her expression cold. Whatever you said to. Their first speaker yesterday has created a problem, she said quietly. The Valrine delegation is requesting your removal from the talks. They claim you displayed culturally inappropriate behavior. Marcus felt his stomach sink. I can explain. I don't want explanations. I want solutions. Rodriguez cut him off. This alliance is too important. The Valrine have technology that could advance humanity by centuries. We cannot afford to lose this opportunity because you couldn't follow simple protocol. Before Marcus could respond, Silith appeared in the doorway. Her light patterns were completely white, rigidly controlled. Ambassador Rodriguez, I wish to continue private discussions with Marcus Chen, she said formally. There are cultural concepts we must clarify before negotiations can proceed effectively. Rodriguez looked between them, suspicion clear on her face. I'm not sure that's appropriate, given it was not a request, Silith said, and there was steel in her voice. The Valrine diplomatic corps requires this clarification. Unless humanity wishes to end these talks entirely. Rodriguez's jaw tightened, but she nodded. 1 hour. Conference room 7. Marcus followed Silith through the station corridors. She moved quickly, her forearms held close to her body. They passed other delegates from various species, some who stared at Silith with curiosity. Finally, they reached a small conference room and Silith sealed the door behind them. The moment the seal engaged, her light patterns exploded into chaotic color. We have a serious problem, she said without preamble. The Hardline faction discovered our private conversation yesterday. They are monitoring me now. They know I have been experiencing unauthorized responses. What does that mean? Marcus asked. It means I am in danger, and so are you, Silith said. She moved to the room's window, staring out at the stars. The Hardliners believe that human culture is a threat to Valrine stability. They think your emphasis on emotion and individual expression could undo 3,000 years of careful conditioning. They want these talks to fail. But your government sent you here, Marcus protested. They must want an alliance. My government is not unified, Silith explained. There are factions within factions. Those who want to engage with younger species, and those who believe we should remain isolated. Those who trust the Reformation, and those who secretly question it. I was sent here by a faction that hoped I would fail, that my defective responses would prove humans were dangerous. Instead, I have done the opposite. She turned to face him, and her light settled into a pattern that seemed somehow determined. There are more like me than the Hardliners know, Silith said quietly. Valrine, who have been secretly reducing their suppressants, who have been remembering what was taken from us. We call ourselves the Resonance. We have been studying pre-Reformation texts hidden for 3,000 years, learning forbidden words, forbidden concepts, and we believe humans might be the key to our liberation. Marcus felt the weight of that statement. That's a lot of responsibility to put on a species you just met. We do not need you to save us, Silith said. We need you to exist. To show the galaxy that a species can embrace emotion and individual expression and not destroy itself. To prove that the Reformation was wrong, that there is another way to live. Before Marcus could respond, an alarm shrieked through the station. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside. Silith's lights went completely white. What? They are coming, she whispered. The Hardliners have made their move. The door to the conference room exploded inward. 3 Valrine entered, moving with military precision. Their bodies were darker than Silith's, their crystal skin reinforced with what looked like armor plating. No light patterns moved beneath their surfaces at all. Silith. First speaker, You are hereby detained for violations of the Emotional Stability Act. One of them announced in a flat mechanical voice. You will be returned to the Baiza homeworld for immediate reconditioning. Am the appointed first speaker of this? Delegation Silith said, her voice steady despite the fear Marcus could see in the rapid flickering of her lights. You have no authority here. That authority has been superseded, the enforcer replied. The Valrine Security Council has determined that you pose a threat to species stability. You will comply or be compelled. They moved towards Silith, but Marcus stepped between them. She's under diplomatic protection, he said, his heart hammering. You can't just take her. You are human, the enforcer said dismissively. You have no standing in Valrine affairs. Move aside or be moved. Marcus, do not, Silith said urgently. They will hurt you. But Marcus held his ground. In that moment, he understood something fundamental about what it meant to be human. It wasn't about being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. It was about the willingness to stand between cruelty and those who suffered from it even when it was dangerous, even when it was stupid, even when it made no logical sense. Enforcer reached for him, and Marcus grabbed its arm. The crystal skin was cold and unnaturally smooth. The enforcer looked down at his hand with what might have been surprise. Then the wall exploded. Not from outside, but from the corridor. Another Valrine burst through, followed by 3 more. But these were different. Their light patterns blazed in wild, uncontrolled color, and they moved with fierce purpose. Silith, run, one of them shouted. The resonance has your back, but we need to move now. The room descended into chaos. Valrine fought Valrine crystal bodies, clashing with sounds like breaking glass. Marcus grabbed Silith's hand and ran. They burst into the corridor where more Valrine were fighting station security, struggling to restore order. This way, Silith pulled him toward a maintenance access. I know this station. I studied the layouts. They ran through narrow passages meant for repair crews. Behind them, Marcus could hear pursuit and the sound of weapons fire. His lungs burned and his legs ached, but Silith pulled him forward with surprising strength. Finally, they emerged in a cargo bay on the lower levels. 6 Valrine waited there, their light patterns blazing in defiance of everything their civilization stood for. One of them stepped forward, and Marcus saw that beneath her crystalline skin were patterns that looked like they had been carved, deliberately scarred into beauty. First speaker, she said, the resonance is ready, but you must choose now. Do we fight or do we run? Silith looked at Marcus, then back at her people. Her lights cascaded through every color, fear and determination, and something that might have been hope. We fight, she whispered, and we show them that humans are not the only ones brave enough to feel. Part 4. The choice, the lower levels of Station Unity, were a different world from the polished diplomatic halls above. Here the lighting was dim and inconsistent. Pipes ran exposed along the walls, dripping condensation. The air smelled of recycled atmosphere and industrial lubricants. This was where the station's workers lived, where species that didn't fit neatly into diplomatic categories made their homes. Silith led Marcus and the Resonance members through a maze of corridors. They moved quickly but carefully, avoiding main passages and security checkpoints. The Valrine with the scarred patterns, whose name was Vashti, walked point using some kind of scanning device to detect patrols ahead. How many of you are there? Marcus asked quietly as they paused at an intersection. More than the hardliners know, Vashti replied. Hundreds across the homeworld. Thousands, perhaps. We have been careful. We hide in plain sight, working normal jobs, attending our duties. But we pass messages and old codes. We meet in secret. We remember. Remember what? Marcus said. Everything they tried to make us forget, another Resonance member named Kelth said. His light patterns flickered with something that looked like anger. Art. Music. Love. Joy. Grief. All the things that make existence more than just function and survival. They reached a heavy blast door that Vashti opened with an override code. Beyond was a large storage chamber that had been converted into living space. Makeshift walls divided the area into smaller rooms. Soft lighting and colors Marcus had never seen from Valrine illuminated the space. And everywhere there was art, Paintings covered the walls, though Marcus didn't understand the medium. Sculptures made of litreactive crystals stood in corners. Musical instruments that looked like nothing he'd seen before hung from the ceiling. And in the center of the main room, dozens of Valrine sat in a circle, their light patterns synchronized in what was clearly some kind of shared meditation. When Silith entered, the synchronized patterns broke. The Valrine turned toward her, and their lights erupted in welcome waves of color that washed through the room like a tide. First speaker, an elderly Valrine, approached, moving slowly. Her crystal skin was clouded with age, but her light patterns burned fierce and bright. "You bring a human into our sanctuary." "I bring a friend," Silith replied. "Marcus Chen, this is Elder Rishta. She remembers the time before the Reformation. She is one of the last." Marcus stared. "You're over 3,000 years old." 3,217 of your years," Rishta said, and her lights flickered with amusement. "I was young when they tried to take feeling from us. I pretended to accept the suppressants, but I found ways around them. I have spent 3 millennia remembering so that someday we might reclaim what was stolen." She moved closer to Marcus, studying him with eyes that held impossible depth. "You called Silith beautiful," Rishta said. "That word has not been spoken aloud in my presence since I was a child. Tell me, human, what did you see when you looked at her?" Marcus glanced at Silith, whose lights had shifted to something that might have been curiosity mixed with fear. He thought about how to explain. "I saw someone struggling with something difficult," Marcus said slowly. "I saw light patterns that reminded me of natural beauty from my world. But more than that, I saw someone who was trying to be authentic in a system that demanded conformity. And I thought that kind of courage was beautiful too." Rishta's lights exploded in a cascade of colors that made the younger Volrine gasp. She laughed a sound like crystal chimes. "You hear that, my children?" she called out. "Humans see beauty not just in appearance, but in character, in choice, in the courage to be oneself. This is what we forgot. This is what the Reformation took from us." She turned back to Marcus. "The hardliners will come for us eventually. They cannot allow this sanctuary to exist. We know this. We have always known this. But we hoped for one thing before the end." "What's that?" Marcus asked. "Truth," Rishta said simply. "Proof that feeling does not mean destruction, that emotion does not equal chaos, that a species can embrace all aspects of existence and still thrive. You humans are that proof. Messy, chaotic, emotional humans who somehow built starships and reached for the stars. Despite all your feelings, or perhaps because of them." Silith stepped forward, her lights determined. "Elder Rishta, I wish to fully remove my suppressant. Here, now." A shocked silence fell over the room. Even the elder seemed taken aback. "Child," Rishta said carefully, "you do not know what you ask. We have all reduced our dosages slowly, carefully. To remove the suppressant entirely, to feel everything without filter, that is dangerous. Some have tried. Some have been destroyed by it." "I know," Silith said. "But I am tired of half measures. I am tired of fighting against what I am. I want to feel everything just once before they take me for reconditioning. I want to know what it means to be truly alive." She looked at Marcus, and her light settled into a pattern he was beginning to recognize as affection. "Will you stay with me?" she asked quietly. "I am frightened. I do not want to be alone if I break." Marcus didn't hesitate. "I'll stay." The process was simple but terrifying. Silith lay down on a medical bed while Vashti prepared an injection. The other Resonance members gathered around, forming a circle. Their light patterns synchronized into something that felt like support, like a net ready to catch someone falling. "This will purge the suppressant from your system," Vashti explained. "You will feel everything you have been blocking your entire life all at once. It will be overwhelming. Remember to breathe. Remember, you are not alone. Remember, we are here." Silith reached out, and Marcus took her hand. Her crystal skin felt warm now, not cold as it had before. "I become someone you do not recognize," Silith whispered. "If I become dangerous or broken, promise me you will leave." "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said. Vashti administered the injection. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Silith's entire body convulsed. Her light patterns exploded into chaos, every color Marcus had ever seen, and thousands he hadn't. They pulsed and crashed and spiraled in patterns that hurt to look at. Silith's hand gripped Marcus's with crushing strength. She screamed. Not in pain, but in release. Like something caged for a lifetime finally breaking free. Colors washed across her skin in waves, deep purples of grief for a childhood she never got to have. Brilliant reds of anger at a system that had stolen feeling from her people. Soft blues of sadness for the ones who would never know what she was experiencing. And golds so bright they seemed to burn joy and wonder and the sheer overwhelming sensation of being alive. Tears ran down her face. Actual tears. Something Marcus hadn't known Valrine could produce. She was laughing and crying simultaneously. Her forearms wrapped around herself as emotion she had no words for crashed through her.
Oh.
I feel everything, she gasped. Marcus, I feel everything, and it is beautiful and terrible, and I never want it to stop. Marcus held her hand and watched as Silith experienced what it meant to be fully alive. Around them, the other Resonance members. Lights pulsed in sympathy, sharing the moment. But outside in the corridors above them, Marcus could hear the sound of security forces. Gathering. The hardliners were coming. And soon they would all have to make a choice between safety and freedom, between survival and life. Silith looked at Marcus with eyes that now held the full weight of emotion and whispered words that would change everything. I love you. I do not fully understand what that means. But I love you, and I love my people, and I love this feeling of being alive. And I would rather die feeling this than live another moment in the emptiness. Part 5. Revolution. Of the heart, the security forces were 3 levels above them and closing fast. Marcus could hear their movements through the station's infrastructure, the heavy footfalls of enforcers and the sharper sounds of weapons being readied. In the Resonance Sanctuary, the Valrine moved with urgent purpose, gathering data cores and personal items, preparing for what might be their last stand. Silith sat on the medical bed, her light patterns still cascading with uncontrolled emotion, but there was clarity in her eyes now. She had experienced the full weight of feeling without suppressants, and instead of breaking, she had emerged stronger, more herself than she had ever been. We cannot fight them, Elder Rishta said pragmatically. The hardliners have military training and weapons designed to shatter crystal bodies. If we stand here, we die. Then we do not stand here, Marcus said. An idea was forming in his mind, dangerous and probably stupid, but very human. We take this public, show the entire galaxy what's happening. How? Vashti asked. The station's security will block any transmission we try to send. Marcus pulled out his personal communicator, a human device that connected to Earth's diplomatic networks. They can't block what they don't know about. Human encryption is different from what the station uses. I guess if I can get to a public broadcast terminal, I can piggyback our signal through human channels, and from there to every species in the galactic community. It will not matter, one of the younger Resonance members said bitterly. The hardliners control the narrative. They will call us defective, dangerous. They will justify our reconditioning. Not if we speak first. Silith stood, her light settling into something fierce and determined. Not if we tell our story in our own words. Not if we show them what they have forgotten. She looked at the gathered Valrine, and something passed between them, understanding and agreement, and the shared knowledge that they were about to do something that could never be undone. Marcus is right, Silith continued. You've hidden long enough. The Resonance has spent 3,000 years in the shadows, remembering in secret. But memories mean nothing if they die with us. It is time to make them see. It is time to make them feel. Elder Rishta stepped forward and placed her hands on Silith's shoulders. Her ancient eyes held pride and sorrow in equal measure. Then we will need a speaker, she said. It's someone who can carry the weight of 3,000 years of silence. Someone who has experienced both the emptiness and the fullness. Someone brave enough to stand before the galaxy and show them what we have lost and what we might reclaim. I will speak, Silith said without hesitation. Then we protect you while you do, Vashti said. The other Resonance members nodded their agreement, lights blazing in defiance. They moved quickly. A group of Resonance fighters led by Vashti headed up to slow the security forces. The rest helped Silith and Marcus navigate through maintenance tunnels toward the station's main communications hub. They moved like water, through spaces not meant for foot traffic, crawling through ventilation shafts and emergency access ways. They emerged in a service corridor near the hub. Marcus could see the main broadcast terminal through a transparent wall, but there were station guards posted at every entrance. He was about to suggest finding another way when Silith simply walked toward the main door. "Silith, wait," Marcus started. But she was already moving. She entered the communications hub with her light patterns blazing in full, uncontrolled color. The guards stared in shock at the Valrine diplomat, who looked like she was on fire with emotion. Before they could react, she spoke. "I am Silith, first speaker of the Valrine Diplomatic Corps, and I am making a formal announcement to all species present on this station," her voice carried with absolute authority. "Any who attempt to stop me will be in violation of interstellar diplomatic law." The guards looked at each other, uncertain. A human diplomat wasn't their authority, but a first speaker was. They stepped aside. Marcus set up the transmission while Silith stood before the main broadcast array. Behind them, Elder Rishta and the other resonance members formed a living wall, should anyone try to stop them. Marcus's fingers flew across the controls, linking human encryption protocols with the station's broadcast system, creating a signal that would bypass all local controls and feed directly to the networks of every major species in the galaxy. "Ready?" he said. "You're living 3-1. The transmission began. Across station unity, across human space, across the territories of dozens of species, holofeeds flickered to life. They showed Silith, standing tall, her crystalline body blazing, with colors that no Valrine had displayed publicly in 3,000 years. "My name is Silith, and I am defective," she began, her voice steady. "That is what my government calls me. I feel things that my species has deemed dangerous. I experience unauthorized emotional responses. I am supposed to be broken, but I stand before you now to tell you that I've never been more whole." She took a breath, and her lights pulsed with determination. 3,000 years ago, my people made a choice. We removed beauty from our language. We suppressed emotion in our children. We decided that feeling was too dangerous, that it would destroy us. And in doing so, we destroyed ourselves in a different way. We became efficient. We became stable. We became empty. Behind her, the resonance members stepped forward one by one, showing their faces, their colors, their defiance. "We are the resonance," Silith continued. "We are Volrine, who remember what was taken, refuse to accept that existence should be nothing more than function, who believe that life without feeling is not life at all. And we stand here today because we met a species that showed us what we had lost." She gestured to Marcus, who stepped into view of the camera. "This is Marcus Chen. He is human, and he called me beautiful." That word had been forbidden in my language for 3,000 years. But when he said it, I felt something break open inside me. I felt seen. I felt valued not for what I could do, but for what I was. And in that moment, I understood what my people had given up. The sounds of heavy footfalls echoed in the corridor outside. The security forces had arrived. "Humans are not the most advanced species, Silith," said her voice rising. "They do not have the best technology. They're messy and chaotic and emotional. But they have something we lost. The courage to be vulnerable. The willingness to feel pain because they know that pain is the price of joy. The understanding that a life without emotion is not safer. It is simply not worth living." The doors burst open. Valrine enforcers poured in, led by a hardliner whose dark crystal armor bore the insignia of the Security Council. But they stopped when they saw the active broadcast, when they realized the entire galaxy was watching. Silith turned to face them, her lights blazing. "I know you will take me for reconditioning," she said. "I know you will try to hollow me out until I no longer feel. But you cannot undo what has happened here. The galaxy has seen us. They have seen that Volrine can feel. And they have seen that we would rather be dangerous than empty." The hardliner stepped forward, his voice cold and mechanical. "You have violated the Emotional Stability Act. You will be detained." "Then detain me," Silith said. "Oh, but know this. Every Volrine watching this broadcast now has a choice. They can accept the suppressants and live in safety. They can choose to feel. And I believe once they know that choice exists, once they understand what they have been denied, you will not be able to stop them. She looked directly at the camera, directly at every Valrine, watching across the galaxy, and whispered the words that would change everything. You are beautiful. All of you. You are beautiful in your complexity, in your individuality, in your courage to question. And you deserve to feel. You deserve to love and grieve and rage and wonder. You deserve to be alive. The hardliner reached for her, but the transmission had already gone viral. Across Volrine space, across the territories of 100 species, the message spread. And on the Valrine homeworld, something unprecedented began to happen. One Valrine publicly removed their suppressant, then another, then hundreds, then thousands. They flooded the streets, their light patterns blazing in colors not seen in 3 millennia. The government tried to suppress the uprising, but you cannot suppress an entire species once they have remembered what it means to feel. The revolution happened not with weapons, but with choice. Valrine simply decided that they would rather risk chaos than accept emptiness. They chose feeling over safety. They chose life over mere existence. Marcus watched it happen on the Holofeed screens. He watched as the Valrine civilization transformed before the galaxy's eyes. He watched as Elder Rishta wept with joy, knowing she had lived to see her people reclaim their souls. And he watched as Silith was taken by the Enforcers, knowing that she had succeeded even as she was led away. Her light patterns never dimmed, never retreated to white. She burned with defiant color all the way out of the room. The Valrine government fell within days. A new coalition formed led by members of the Resonance dedicated to emotional freedom and individual expression. Silith was released from detention and asked to lead. The Reformation not to remove feeling, but to help her people learn to live with it again. Months later, Marcus stood in what had been the old Valrine Senate building, now transformed into a place of art and music and celebration. Valrine children learned words that had been lost. Artists created beauty without shame. And slowly, painfully, the species began to remember how to feel. Silith found him standing alone, looking out at the Valrine capital city, now blazing with light patterns that painted the night sky. "Are you ready?" she asked. They were leaving for Earth tomorrow? Silith was coming as an ambassador, but also as a partner. The Valrine and humans had much to teach each other. "I have one question," Marcus said. "What was it you whispered to me that day in the sanctuary? The words you said you'd never forget?" Silith's lights shifted to soft golds and purples, the colors of affection and hope. "I told you that humans taught me the most important lesson," she said. "That being broken open is not the same as being broken. That vulnerability is not weakness. That the courage to feel is the greatest strength any being can possess." She took his hand, her crystal skin warm against his. "You called me beautiful, and in doing so, you gave me permission to be fully alive," Silith whispered. "And that is the gift humans give to the galaxy. Not technology or power, but the reminder that existence is meant to be felt, not just survived." Marcus looked at her and understood that humanity's place among the stars was not to be the strongest or the smartest. It was to be the mirror that reflected back to other species the parts of themselves they had forgotten or suppressed or been taught to fear. "Come on," he said. "We have a galaxy to show that it's okay to feel." And together they walked into the future, no longer empty, no longer afraid, just beautifully and possibly alive.